John Angelbeck from NineLine here, and we appreciate everyone taking an interest in learning more about the importance of 911 compliance and how it can improve response times for first responders and ultimately save lives, which is the end goal of two very important federal laws that we'll discuss. And then we'll even bring in a special guest who will provide real-world scenarios of how important these laws can be. So these laws started back in 2020, and then they took final effect on January 6th of 2022. And really, they affect all organizations with a multi-line telephone system. So that would be your MRA, Cisco hard phones, things like that that sit on your desk, and then soft phones as well, such as those WebEx Teams clients, Microsoft Teams, and then even Jabber. And the end goal, as we mentioned before, is to improve those response times and ultimately save lives. So as far as the law overview, we'll let John introduce our first law here.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. So with Kerrys Law, we always tell our clients to ask yourselves three things. So first of all is going to be that 911 must be dialed directly. That means with no prefix whatsoever. Your employees within your organization need to be able to dial out 911 directly. The next item is going to be that someone on staff needs to be notified that 911 was dialed. So are you notifying someone today, whether it's via text, whether it's via email or a phone call? Is someone in IT, security, a receptionist, someone needs to be notified that 911 was dialed within the organization. And finally, and this is very important because it's something NineLine makes sure we accomplish that our competitors sometimes don't always, is going to be a valid callback number must be provided to the PSAP in the event of a disconnection. So what that means is the PSAP needs to be able to directly reconnect with the original caller. They can't be routed through a receptionist, a security, or IT desk. They need to be able to directly call back to that original 911 dialer in the event of a disconnection.
Thanks, John. So then our next law is going to be known as the Baum Act, which took effect for Part 1 on January 6th of 2021. So Baum's Act requires a dispatchable location to be included when 911 is called, and a dispatchable location begins with the building street address plus additional information such as a room number, floor number, and then any other relevant information to help those first responders find a caller. So then Part 2 of the Baum Act added that remote worker element, such as those Microsoft Teams clients, those WebEx Teams clients, and Jabber clients on January 6th of 2022. So with those laws in mind, the overarching question is, could these laws have saved more lives if they were implemented sooner? And the short answer is yes, and we have a special guest today that can attest to that. So with that, we'd like to welcome Christian Gulotta, who is a 24-year veteran of the NYPD and also served as captain during his time there. Currently, he's a public safety consultant with his self-starter 10-4 Consulting, and we'll let him talk more about that a little bit later and what he specializes in. But for now, we'd like to bring in Christian and ask him some questions as his experience relates to Kerrys Law and Baum's Act.
In your experience at the NYPD and visiting many large organizations such as hospitals, schools, can you explain why it's so crucial for these organizations to comply with Kerrys Law and Baum's Act?
Sure. Well, we live in very unpredictable times, John. When companies comply with Kerrys Law and Baum's Act, they're enhancing their organization's safety, whether it's a business, a hospital, a school, or a hotel. Anyone who calls 911 from their premise will be providing the operator the exact location of the emergency through the anti-alley. In the event that the caller can't provide their exact location, 911 will have it, and the operator will be able to dispatch an emergency response immediately.
Has there been an instance where these laws could have helped had they been in effect and the organization was complying?
There would be many instances when compliance with these laws would have helped 911 callers and first responders. Specifically, I think of the hotel industry and the role that they play in human trafficking and child exploitation. Imagine someone being held against their will in a hotel, first not knowing how to dial out to 911 if they have to dial a 2 or a 9, second telling the operator that they need the police, but they don't know exactly where they are. If a hotel is not in compliance with these laws, imagine police responding to that hotel trying to find the caller when the hotel has 100 or 200 rooms. It would be quite a challenge.
Christian, you have experience in working with PSAPs and reducing response times for first responders. How big of an asset is a provided dispatchable location when we're talking about reducing those response times further?
Like any other industry, there are various metrics to use to track performance and service levels. When a 911 operator gets that exact dispatchable location, they're creating the event in CAD faster. Emergency resources can get dispatched faster, and therefore they're reducing response times and improving people's overall safety.
Christian, you also have experience in acquiring as much information as possible from callers. How important is it to be as granular as possible when providing a PSAP with 911 caller information?
It's extremely important for the 911 operator to get accurate information in the shortest amount of time possible. Remember that in 911, we want to get the right resources to the right location in the fastest amount of time possible. If someone's under distress in a criminal or a medical emergency, they might not be able to provide their exact location within a premise. That exact dispatchable location means everything to the operator and first responders. And as first responders, when we're going to an emergency, we don't want any guessing games. We want to know exactly where we're going to give the help that's needed.
And Christian, can you talk about an experience that you've had responding to a location without an exact room number? How much more difficult does that make things?
Oh, absolutely. Responding to shelters and hospitals, we would have patients call 911 and they didn't know what room number they would be in. Upon arriving, we would have to speak to security. They would be completely unaware of the situation. Then we would have to have the dispatcher call the complainant, or we would have to do a walkthrough of the premise to conduct an investigation. All of this delaying our response time to render aid and give assistance.
Thanks, Christian. You provided some really valuable insight from a first responder's perspective as they relate to Kerrys Law and Ray Baum's Act. So, with that, we've created a five-step checklist for organizations who aren't sure if they're in compliance with one or even both of these laws. So, for steps 1 through 3, that's just going to involve Kerrys Law. So, step 1, can users dial 911 directly without any added prefixes or extensions? Step 2, are we notifying somebody on staff that somebody from the organization has dialed 911? Step 3, is a valid callback number being provided to the PSAP in the event that there's a disconnection? And then steps 4 through 5 are going to just be parts 1 and 2 of the Ray Baum Act. So step 4 is a dispatchable location being provided for those on-site phones. And then step 5 is dispatchable location going to be provided for remote workers. And then John's got some best practices as well.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. So, from a best practices perspective, first thing we always recommend is lock your wiring closet, right? So, when we're talking about if you've done things via the switch port mapping, we want to make sure that that's locked down, that's secured. You don't have people going in there and moving wires and phones and things like that around. So, always lock your wiring closet. Make sure you have the appropriate company signage. When we talk to clients about building out their ERLs and ELINs and these emergency response locations, when we're sending that dispatchable location to the PSAP, try to use the current signage you have in your building today. When a first responder is coming out of a stairwell or getting out of an elevator, what signage do they see around them that's going to help those first responders find that person who dialed 911 the fastest? Clearly define a process in the event of a 911 emergency. So make sure that your staff and your employees are trained that, hey, we have a defined process of how we handle these events and what to do. Again, don't delay on the compliance steps that Drew mentioned above as well. So there's always the litigation piece of it and the financial side of it, right? The FCC for folks that aren't getting compliant going forward, there's going to be fines and things of that nature coming down the line if you're not getting compliant. I believe it's a $10,000 fine and then $500 for every day thereafter. In the event that someone were to get injured or lose their life, you've got the litigation aspect of it as well. When we talk about Kerrys Law, that was a multi-million-dollar payout because Kari unfortunately lost her life when those phones didn't dial 911 out. But more so, we try to focus on the fact that this technology really can save lives. If you're having a heart attack at your desk after hours and no one else is in the building, when you dial 911 and send that dispatchable location from the phone on your desk, I may not be able to say where I'm at, but those first responders are going to get that dispatchable location. And rather than having to spend who knows how much time searching the building or the campus for you, they're going to have that dispatchable location to go off of. And that goes back to being as granular as possible as well. So when we talk about setting up those emergency response locations and those dispatchable locations, NineLine does not charge by ERL or ELIN. We want you to be as granular as possible when you're setting those up.
Thanks, John. So with that, we'll introduce NineLine as a company itself and how we can help. So At NineLine, we have 18 years of Cisco voice and software development behind our leadership and development team. And with that, we've also spent 15 years in the partner community. And that's really where we got our start with the upcoming Kerrys Law requirement coming into effect. We had clients coming to us asking if we could, develop an affordable solution, so clients don't have to pay an arm and a leg just to dial 911, because that's our end goal here, is to ultimately save lives and allow people to dial 911. So with that, we also are an approved Cisco solution partner. And like I said, our end goal is to evaluate an organization's current environment and ultimately help them take the steps to achieve compliance with Kerrys Law and Ray Baum's Act. And then I'll let John go over our call solution here.
Yeah, Drew, so we have two solutions that can get you compliant with the 911 laws as it stands today. So we have NineLine for CER, we have NineLine for Call Manager. So if you've already stood up CER, we can integrate with what you've already done there. If you haven't stood up CER yet, we also have the NineLine for Call Manager Agent. And what that allows us to do is you can skip over the investment of the time, money, and resources to stand CER up, but then also your upgrades every so often after that. In either case, whether it's NineLine for CER or NineLine for Call Manager, we're going to use CER and or the NineLine agent to track both your on-premise phones as well as any remote users. When they dial 911, Call Manager is going to loop those in through the emergency call routing. So we'll have either your CER servers pointed to our NineLine cloud or the NineLine agent sending that information to the cloud. So you're going to send and pass along that dispatchable location along with the address of the on-prem phone or the nomadic user. We're going to hand that off to the PSAP, and another big cost savings that comes into play with NineLine is going to be our DID pooling feature. So you don't have to pay for 911 specific DIDs. We're actually able to go ahead and have a pool where you send us a fake ELIN or an extension. We stamp that dispatchable call location and address information on the DID, hand that off to the PSAP, and we reserve that for up to 24 hours in the event of the callback as well.
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate that. And with that, we'll let Christian introduce his company and how they can help as well.
First, Drew, thank you for having me today. I am a retired NYPD captain with 18 plus years of leadership and management experience. I am an expert at 911 and radio communications, a transformational leader who has achieved quantifiable outcomes throughout my career, and I am an IT public safety facilitator as well.
Christian, how can your solution help 911 operators and dispatchers?
Well, at 10-4, we identify problems and create strategies for recruitment and retention of 911 operators and dispatchers across the country. Retention and recruitment of operators is a national issue. Additionally, I help agencies improve 911 operator and dispatcher performance metrics, provide management and leadership development for 911 emergency call centers, and enhance 911 and radio operations to improve efficiencies. I also like to work with IT companies to bridge that gap between public safety and vendors.
Well, Christian, really want to thank you for joining us today and taking the time here. We hope we were able to collectively provide more insight to Kerrys Law and Ray Baum's Act, along with some great real-world experience from Christian and his team. You can learn more about NineLine by visiting NineLine911.com.
And otherwise, you can learn more about Christian and 10-4 Consulting by looking Christian up on LinkedIn, just at his name. That's Christian Gulotta. And then otherwise, you can send Christian an email as well, and he'll get back to you directly. His email is cg@10ten-4consulting.com. But anyway, like John said, we appreciate Christian jumping on and providing a real-world insight. We also appreciate everybody watching and learning more about the importance of 911 compliance. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day.